Good evening, everybody. My name is Ray O'Neill. I'm one of the Associate Deans of the Faculty of Science and Engineering, and it's my pleasure to welcome you all to this event this evening, this timely event, which is an event for Science Week. And it's co-hosted by the Faculty of Science and Engineering and the Development and Alumni Relations Office here in the university. So welcome is my task. I think in the Faculty of Science and Engineering we're hugely and rightly proud of the quality of the education that we offer to all our students. And that's built on the fact that we do research at cutting edge across a wide range of things, some of which is in evidence tonight with the panelists from within the university, but also alumni and representatives from enterprise and industry from outside, and our students also. So all of that education that we're proud of wouldn't be possible if we weren't also nimble and thinking about how to constantly improve. And I think the one thing about tonight's topic is that we know education will be different in the future as a result of the developments that are taking place. So it's a discussion that I'm looking forward to hugely. I'd like to thank all the panelists for participating tonight, and to formally introduce them, please would you welcome our Vice President for External Affairs, Rebecca Doolan.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for being here tonight on what I guess is a rainy, again, evening. So we're really, really pleased to see so many alumni, colleagues, students, and members of the public here on what is a very topical discussion indeed. Universities, as Ray said, have always had to evolve our curriculum and the way we teach to make sure we're preparing students for the world that they're going to encounter post-graduation. But I think it's fair to say that with the workplaces feeling so undefined, so uncertain, particularly for entry-level jobs, the questions that we're really exploring tonight almost feel existential. So I really want to jump right in because we have an amazing panel to help us probe and really help shed some light and I think hope on what AI means for the future of learning and indeed the future workplaces that our graduates are going to encounter. Both the skills they're going to need to encounter this world, but also the ethical questions that they're going to be probing and have to navigate. So to do this, we have 2 academics, 3 esteemed alumni, and of course the president of our Maynooth Students Union. I'm going to invite them all up. And I'm really, really grateful for you all being here tonight. I have to say, you're both a reminder and actually a physical embodiment of the fact that, and this might surprise some of you, the Maynooth alumni community is now over 100,000 graduates around the world, all of you making contributions to your communities and in various fields in various ways. So we're so proud of you all, and we're so proud to have you here tonight. I'm going to start welcoming and introducing our panel and ask you all to come to the stage. I'm going to start with our academics, Professor Rosemary Monahan, if you could come up. Professor Monahan is a professor of computer science at Maynooth University and an affiliate of the MU Hamilton Institute. She specializes in software verification, teaming up with experts around the world in industry to make software more reliable. She leads a Research Ireland Frontiers of the Future project called MAVE, working on verification and visualization of AI-based systems, and I'll ask her to explain that in more detail later. She's also a funded investigator on a project called Verify, Traceability and Verification of Natural Language Requirements. That is a mouthful. Professor John Keating, if you can come up. John is not only a professor in the Department of Computer Science, he also currently serves as the Associate Dean for Teaching and Learning in the Faculty of Science and Engineering. He, too, is a proud Maynooth alumnus. What year was it, John, I think? Oh, let's see, 1990. He did. And he got his PhD in 1990 before promptly joining the faculty of Maynooth University. John has an extensive research portfolio, but as part of his role as Associate Dean, he's exploring the evolving use of AI in teaching, learning, and assessment. He's currently also exploring the role of generative AI and agentic AI on coding and software engineering, and how this change impacts on how we teach computer science. He's also working with students on investigating the use of assistive AI in an academic integrity context. Next is Charlie Middleton, both a recent Maynooth grad with a BA in politics and philosophy. She is also currently president of the Maynooth Students Union. Charlie grew up just outside Maynooth and previously served as vice president for academic affairs in the MSU last year, supporting students with issues related to lectures, assessments, and grading. During her time at Maynooth, she has worked on multiple university committees on student engagement and representation. This includes discussions around AI and how students can utilize it. We're really happy to have you here tonight, Charlie. Mark Hennessy. Mark, if you could come up. Mark's flown in from Seattle to be with us tonight. He lives in Kirkland, Washington, just outside Seattle with his wife and 2 daughters. Mark is currently a partner engineering manager in Microsoft, but he's a native of County Kildare. Whereabouts, Mark? Just Dundee, so right down the road. Mark graduated from Maynooth in 2002 with a BSc in science and in 2007 with a PhD in computer science. He's worked at Microsoft for over 18 years, and since 2018, he's led the engineering group that's responsible for integrating enterprise workloads and supercomputers into the company's Azure cloud computing platform. These supercomputers have been at the vanguard of the AI and large language model training that powered ChatGPT since 2022. With the explosion of popularity in AI and inference tools for consumer and enterprise since then, Mark's team have been at the forefront of scaling the infrastructure for the most well-known global AI organizations. Really excited to hear from someone who's been on the ground, Mark, so thanks for coming. Mari Taylor-Gent is no stranger to the university. She has 20-plus years of experience both in industry and professional services, spanning data, technology, process improvement, and digital transformation. Mari graduated from Maynooth in 2001 with a BSc in mathematics and computer science. As a partner in PwC's assurance practice, Mari leads the firm's asset management digital solutions team, where she's responsible for leading, scaling, and delivering PwC's digital solutions and services to the asset management industry to drive impact. Adrian Treneman. Aid is an engineering director at Google here in Dublin, where he leads software engineering teams in ads and commerce. In 1995, Aid earned his bachelor's degree in computer science in Trinity, Dublin, before making the very wise decision to come to Maynooth University for his PhD in computer science, which he earned in 1999. Aid was previously Senior Vice President of Engineering for the Hudson Bay Company, leading engineering teams in New York and Dublin. Father of 4, he loves traveling, mountain biking, hiking, long-distance running, reading, and learning new things, which I'm sure we are bound to do tonight. So I'm going to get started now, and before the discussion begins, I just wanted to let you know that we'll have a question and answer period at the end of the session. So hold your questions and keep them in mind. So I'm just going to come on over here, turn this down so I can see you all. A couple of mics to pass around. And Mark, because I know everybody's dying to know more, I want to start with you. It was November 2022, I think, when ChatGPT launched, and you were deep into that whole AI sea change. It was going back even much earlier, 2019, I believe. Can you just tell us about your role, tell us what that was like, and your experience really on what is the coalface of the AI revolution?
Yeah, it's good to be here tonight, and thanks obviously Rebecca for inviting me and to be here with this great panel. I'll try and explain how I was involved in this, and then tell you what happened pre-2022. So, working in obviously in Microsoft, you get to be exposed to just a lot of kind of big challenges and big solution-y stuff, right? And I've been working in the cloud space for a long time, and most folks, if they kind of go back in their memories, if they've been following at least through the story of OpenAI, will recall that there was an initial $1 billion investment made by Microsoft in 2019 in this company called OpenAI. At that point in time, the kind of technology stack that my team were responsible for was the one selected to build and integrate that, because it in effect was its own unique thing. So we didn't, clouds do general purpose compute and have done general purpose compute for the past 20 years quite well. But this thing was different. It was its own kind of unique beast, very, very one-off at the time, and we were kind of asked to build it. So in 2019, we ended up building in a cornfield in Des Moines, Iowa, a big supercomputer, which was called Odyssey, if you read about any of the kind of history of OpenAI. And it had, at the time, which was pretty big, it had like 10,000 GPUs all hooked together in one InfiniBand network, which was unusual for the time. But we built it, and then I think we all kind of went, well, that's done. Never hear about these guys again. And not hearing about something after delivering a product is really good, because it means it's working and it's not broken. So that was useful. And then the only other time, pre-2022, we had this demo. I think it was 2021, post-COVID, we'd kind of gotten back into the office, and we got a demo of what these folks were doing. And it was a time-lapse video, an animated time-lapse video of effectively, which computer scientists would know, most folks have interviewed, like the mouse in a maze type thing, right? So it's a classic recursive type, search all paths, get out of the maze. And I had this time-lapse video showing how many iterations were ongoing, and you could see like 10,000, 20,000, 30,000, and you can see it a couple of times it gets out of the maze. Okay. But then you can clearly see where the researchers have started to adapt the model. And all of a sudden, these mice were going up the walls, and they were finding 3 dimensions and finding all these other ways out of the maze. And it was like, ooh. And not to kind of preempt the scariness of like, the conversations around AI, but that at that time was like, that looks cool. So they're clearly onto something. And then we all went back to sleep again because, cool, they made videos. And then only in 2022, in November, then most people would probably have intersected with the kind of text chat GPT thing that arrived. So from that point on, obviously, the rest of the world then started to intersect with OpenAI, and which has obviously been a great thing for myself and my team, because since February 2023, we have been non-stop going gangbusters delivering GPUs for these guys. And it has been utterly, utterly insane, the scale, pace, velocity, and we don't have time to think. So, and just, finally to prove it out, over there beside Neve, just if anyone wants to see it later on, is a piece of computing history, because this is one of the original V100s on which we trained ChatGPT 3. So people can go down and take a look at that piece of computing history later on.
Thanks, Steve. Thanks so much, Mark. That's fascinating. And I'm so glad you took the time to bring that artifact with us. We have to get it into our science museum one day. Just quickly, in the spirit of education, can you quickly explain to the audience the difference between Gen AI and agentic AI? We're all kind of probably more familiar with Gen AI, but how should we be thinking about agentic AI, particularly when it comes to kind of the work and the careers and tech business and lots of other sectors?
Yeah, I mean, here's how I at least think about this, is that, you can empower, agents and agentic AI to go talk to each other, right? And I'm kind of viewing that in my, at least, mental model of this as being somewhat of like a business workflow, right? So in the past, you would have developers write code for business workflows and business processes, and it would, effectively do whatever the code said. Nowadays, of course, you can have these kind of series of composed agents start to talk and communicate to each other. And perhaps they're going to get a little bit smarter if they retain the context about, with some oversight and reinforcement learning about, is the process working or not, right? So that's my naive mental model of the agentic stuff. And so long as there still remains governance, oversight, and if any state change occurs as a result of all these agents communicating, a human in the loop, to me, I feel that's really just an organic evolution of then kind of normal business processes.
Thanks. Ada, I want to come to you. Can you tell me a little bit about your role at Google and what the last few years have been like for you? And particularly, have you seen the skills requirements for the roles change? I know that's something a lot of people in this audience will be thinking about.
Gosh, well, first, right, my love affair with machine learning actually began here in Maynooth back in around 1996, which was really, really cool. And, Ray mentioned, being on the bleeding edge here. It was so bleeding edge, I got cut, right? There was blood everywhere, right? And at the time, it's funny, you think at the speed of change. At that time, I remember chatting with one of my colleagues here in the computer science department and agreeing, with machine learning and AI, every 10 years we all get excited about a new development and then it just falls flat, So I left the university and I entered the workplace. And then 10 years later, I found myself in an e-commerce company where we were using neural networks. And I was like, this is pretty amazing, And we were using neural networks to understand fashion. So we were doing things like we were looking at our dresses and we were saying, hey, is that an A-line dress or is it a ball gown? Is it strapless? Is it spaghetti strap? Is it a little off the shoulder? And I never thought in my career I would end up kind of, doing that. But it turned out that the neural networks and deep learning neural networks had just turned a huge corner. Like all of a sudden we were able to actually get this incredible information out of images that we were never able to do before and build really, really great user experiences. So I was kind of excited. Now, at the time, I realized that as software engineers, we were kind of morphing our roles a little bit. You began to hear back in the 2000s and somethings, you'd hear more like a machine learning specialist, or you might hear the role data scientist. And these were new terms almost back then. And it became clear that some of the best software engineers were actually leaning into these technologies. So move forward. 2019, I joined Google. And working in Google Shopping, we were definitely using machine learning already for for trust and safety and policy, like we're detecting, hey, is somebody trying to sell a gun? We don't want to show a gun on the site. So we're doing all this kind of amazing work with machine learning, but over in Google DeepMind, there was just incredible stuff happening. Like 2021 was AlphaFold, and then the large language models started coming out. And initially, kind of, we were looking over at this new Gen AI stuff and kind of going, this is amazing, But then it began to kind of filter into our roles as well, okay? And there's a few ways, kind of, we began again, applying these amazing models into machine vision and extraction. So you began to see this shift again of engineers all of a sudden taking on this new hat, this new set of skills, So I think, one of the big things that's happened more recently is we've changed the job description. We've changed the role profile of an engineer to make it really, really clear. Your part of your role is to be up to speed in AI, right? You need to be aware of what's going on. You need to be aware of the techniques, how you might use them, and you need to be using AI to increase your productivity. And I got to say, that's a huge thing, I think, for Google. When you put that in the job profile, it enters the culture, it enters the expectations, it enters how people manage and are managed. So yeah, like it's the adoption is just it's enormous. Yeah,
it is. So, and to take that formal step, and that's really quite practical information, and for us as educators and for students applying for those jobs. Similarly, Mari, can you're a partner in a consulting business. So you're not just seeing how your own company is adapting to AI, but you're also getting great insights into all the client companies that you work with. So can you tell me a little bit about, your experience and how you see the work and the roles and the jobs changing?
Super. I might take a step back to give the kind of broader industry perspective. So if I go back to our CEO survey, it's our 28th year of running an annual survey across CEOs globally. So over 4,700 global CEOs contribute to this, and 82 Irish CEOs. So first of all, to give you the Irish economic backdrop, to maybe what Mark and Adrian are saying, Irish CEOs are more optimistic than last year, and 74% of the CEOs believe the Irish economy will improve in the next year, before I tell you the next statistics. But 29% of Irish CEOs fears their companies won't survive the next 10 years without change. And that's really like kind of listening to the guys talk about the pace of change. And then I think what's really, really fascinating is 94%, like that is phenomenal, expect AI to be integrated into their business processes and workflows in the next 3 years. So AI is in every single conversation we have. And PwC is no different to our CEO peers in terms of the existential I suppose, crisis it gives us, but also the opportunity to change and thrive in a changing world. From a PwC perspective, we are one of Microsoft's biggest customers actually globally. We are spending €1 billion to develop and scale our AI, Gen AI capabilities. We have partnerships with Microsoft and OpenAI. I myself am part of the assurance practice, and fundamentally what we do is, not me personally, but our audit partners, we sign off financial statements. Though what we're doing is not changing, right? We're still signing the statements, but the how we're doing it is fundamentally being reimagined, and that's through AI, through data. In my own team, we have spent multi-millions on developing a bespoke proprietary data ingestion on structured data. And then luckily, actually, we didn't know what was happening in the US, but our investment now is really, really timely because everyone you talked about using AI, it's the importance of having good, clean, standardized data. So we're really in a position to capitalize on that. But we, again, if you think to auditors, we're obviously hearing from engineers, but if you think of auditors, typically their roles were ticking and tying. That's no longer their roles, and no longer their roles when they start their careers. They're now getting the data quicker, they're analysing, they're reviewing. In the world I work, it's the funds industry, right? It is all about data. And they're getting to see really, really interesting things, I think, and I think the future of audit is incredibly exciting. And back to your point, Mark, when we talk about our technology strategy, and we are all over AI and all over how we transform ourselves across all parts of our business, but it is human-led, tech-empowered, and it is all about human in the loop.
I want to pick up on that. So for all the kind of industry panelists or alumni here, I really want to talk about those entry-level jobs, because you're talking about changing world of work across the board, but for so many of obviously our students are going to be going into those entry-level jobs. And I saw an article actually in the New York Times recently. Anish Raman, who's the Chief Economic Opportunity Officer at LinkedIn, he wrote a piece titled, "I'm a LinkedIn executive, I see the bottom rung of the career ladder breaking." But hold on, it's not all bad. But he cites a similar survey, 3,000 executives at vice president level or higher, and says 63% agreed that AI will eventually take on some of the mundane tasks currently allocated to those entry-level employees. Some examples, whether it's the advanced coding tools that our junior developers are using, law firms whose first-year associates were often doing lots of document review, that's now being done in a matter of minutes, chatbots replacing customer service duties. But interestingly, he says, to fix entry-level work, we have to reimagine it entirely, giving workers higher-level tasks and redesign first jobs with growth in mind, roles that teach adaptability, not repetition, and serve as springboards, not stalls. Fixing entry-level work is the first step to fixing all work. So for all of you, what do you think? And how should we as a university be preparing our students for that job market that's being upended? Or is it? So I don't know who wants to start.
Do you want me to kick off? I have another round of statistics for people. Hence the cards. So maybe just to set the scene, and then it'd be kind of good, the other guys coming in. So we just, this is hot off the press. So we launched our Agentic AI survey on Tuesday night. So this was, I kind of think, over 50 C-suite from the Irish market, and this ties into what you're saying. 64% of Irish respondents are of the view that the AI agents will reshape their workplace more than the internet. And the US equivalent to that was actually 75%. And 44% of Irish respondents believe that within the next 12 months, AI agents will drastically transform many existing roles. But when I think about the entry-level jobs, right, grad jobs have always been competitive, right? But I actually think what's incredibly exciting is you're seeing where the CEOs are thinking they're having to reimagine their roles and their business. When any of you in the audience, if you work and you go into a new job and you ask, well, why do you do it like that? It's like, we've always done it like that. And you quickly lose your curiosity. But grads coming into the market with the right skills, with the right critical thinking, with the right curiosity, I think they can make a really, really huge impact. Nobody wants to be ticking time 500 bank statements, right? It wasn't that much fun when you talk to my team. But it's a real opportunity to bring the academics of your subject choice, but coupling that with the ability to use Gen AI. In PwC, the question everybody's asked if you send something up for review, have you used Gen AI to check it? And the way we compensate or kind of, I suppose, put those guardrails in place is we 5 Cs. Is the output complete? Is it current? Is it correct? Is it clean? And is it checkable? And the checkable is, do you have the skills to check these outputs? So it's there, it exists, and I actually think as graduates, I think it's an incredibly exciting time to enter the organisations. It is all change. The CEOs, the tone from the top is what's going to drive transformational structural change, and I would be delighted to be a grad now because I think come from any discipline, you can probably do any job.
So you're saying it's more of a level playing field.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Mark or Aid, do you want to?
I guess I got the working mic, so I'll go next. Look, it's great to hear the zoomed out perspective, because when you work down in the super nerdy weeds of where I work, you don't get that kind of like top level C-suite view. So thank you. I think that's really good. So I'll give you a kind of perspective again as someone who hires for, like, let's just say classic CS grads, and help at least frame it through that very, very concrete lens, right? My view is that, you know, it's essential that, you know, at least grads who are coming through in software and CS have the conception of, I can develop and do something else, right? And that something else is actually grounded in the foundations of computer science, right? They understand where their code is going to run. They understand what type of distributed system it's involved in. They understand the failure modes. And they're really kind of thinking about, you know, to Mary's point about can it be checked or verified, right? They should be able to assert that, yes, this piece of code that I may have also had like a co-pilot, you know, produce most of the boilerplate. I'm very, very confident and you know, assured of my skills in system design and system thinking that my code can run out, you know, at scale reliably. So it's very much, you know, to Mary's point, you're going to, you know, be exposed to more interesting challenges faster, earlier in career, And that's actually pretty good, because a lot of times, especially, and again, I'll just talk big company stuff, right? It can be really hard to kind of progress your career, and people say, I don't feel like I'm learning, right? These kind of tools that can aid your development are already available from day one. And so if you're coming in with this kind of and mentality to your kind of core skills from your degree, it's only going to benefit you.
Yeah, gosh, what would I say? I think it's probably a daunting time, because we do see that kind of media narrative, and it could come across maybe as a little bit scary. But I think it is really, really exciting. One thing I would say, just to add, because I love those stats, from the middle out, we are human organizations, and one of the most exciting things that happens in a Google team is that an intern arrives. You have no idea the excitement. And the interesting thing is, for a while now, it is not the case. Thankfully, we don't have a lot of box ticking. So it is not the case that we're giving the worst work to the youngest person on the team or the newest person on the team. What we're actually doing is we're actually saying, hey, here's a great problem. Go dive in and go solve it. Okay. So what I think will happen is I think we'll see. We'll see the graduate engineers and graduates that they'll have a more exciting entry into the workplace. And I totally agree. The other thing there is, while AI will take over some of the busy work, if you will, there always has to be a smart human who is accountable and saying, yes, this is it, okay? And so, if you think about it, like, it's not either or. It's not that I want somebody who's great at Gemini or ChatGPT, or I want them to be a super computer science. I need them to be both, right? And when they're in that space, that's going to be brilliant.
That's really interesting. And I want to transition into the education piece, but Mari, one question for you, and I don't know, Rosemary, Charlie, you might come into this, but you told me something really interesting, that you think AI could actually help attract more women and girls into STEM careers. Why?
Well, this is my own personal reflection. Having studied computer science as part of my degree, so I'm not going to speak on behalf of all of the women or ladies or the wannabe joiners, but just thinking about my own, I suppose, academic life. So back in my day, when the assignments came up, there's two parts to it. There was the designing the code and the coding. Loved designing the code and did really well. But then there was the coding part, which required the syntax learning. It just didn't kind of do it as much for me, and I probably didn't put in enough of the effort that I should have. And my friends were like, just learn the syntax. And I didn't just learn the syntax. It wasn't really my thing. But when I'm playing around with Gen AI now, I loved all of the concepts and all of the kind of what you needed to know. It was just literally, I just didn't have that discipline to sit and learn the syntax. And you can't really become a great coder if you don't know the foundations. And I just think, from my own perspective, if I was to go back to college now, I think Gen AI, it's just so accessible to code. It's kind of customizable. I can ask it questions. When John Keating rushed a little bit too fast in the lectures, I could kind of go back and and check. And I just think to myself, is this a catalyst for maybe attracting more females into STEM, and nearly takes coding from being, into maybe more of a communication piece, which is typically, a trait more associated with females.
Rosemary, do you want to come in?
Okay, yes, I think it is working. I think, I suppose what we see with females in STEM is that we see that there's a lot of engagement in secondary school, we'll say, from females in terms of logic, in terms of maths, and then we see that dropping off. So perhaps if this, you say it does level the playing field, that maybe it does mean that people can make these decisions at a higher level, or that they're not involved in the nitty-gritties, that it would be more attractive. So I can certainly see that. And again, just to echo what Mark was saying in terms of the core skills, if you are learning the core skills in terms of coding, in terms of how you think about a design, how you design, how the skills that you need in order to come up with something that is novel, that is new, and then you've got assistance to do that, then through AI, then I think that that's what our focus needs to be in teaching those skills. So not teaching, not teaching just AI, but teaching how you use AI and how to engage with it using those core skills.
I don't know, Charlie, if you have any thoughts on that.
Yeah, I guess I think like from like just recently graduating, I know in philosophy we did a lot on Gen AI towards my final year, my second year as well, and I found it really interesting because it's something I didn't get to experience during my time in college, and it would have been something that I then got to experience again, reliving my kind of primary school, secondary education and stuff. I think as well, like it's about like accessibility, like everyone's been saying as well, and like I think even just being able to see it, like visibility as well, like you can kind of see yourself through the interdisciplinary aspect of it as well. Like I know through like philosophy and politics, like we did a lot of kind of stuff surrounding it, kind of more towards the political aspect and like sustainability and stuff as well. But it was really interesting to learn it, even though I wasn't on a STEM course. So I do think it'd be a good idea. So.
Yeah, we were talking about, I think Professor Susie Gottliebers doing putting together a module on ethics and AI, which will be really interesting from a philosopher's perspective. John, I want to come to you because you're really involved with what the university is doing to adapt the way it teaches. So can you tell us, obviously there's different perspectives, different approaches, different levels of embracing AI or not, and within academia more broadly than just the university here. So what do you see, and can you tell us about what's being done or give us some examples?
Yes, thanks, Rebecca. I presume this is on, but if it's not, I'd shout because I'm always in this lecture room shouting, at somebody or other. But okay, so we have a very interesting landscape at the moment. So we have guidelines for staff and students in terms of how we utilize AI. So and we break this into different levels. So there's a level 0 model for you attach to assessments where there's no use of AI. And then we have level 4 where there's full use of AI, complete abandon. And then we have level 2 and level 3, which are various levels of assistance that you can utilize AI. So those are the guidance, and what's beautiful about what's happened in this university is that the students wrote the students' guidelines, and the staff wrote the staff guidelines, and they're pretty much aligned, and they iterated over time, and we had kind of this alignment between both sets so that the meaning was understood by all. I mean, Charlie's team worked on this from the student perspective. Given that we have that in place, we also have some policies in each of the individual departments. The policies, mostly from my experience, are level 0, you cannot use AI, any form of assessment. And that, even in some of my department, in terms of, which is not unsurprising, I would be very much and would have been, let's use AI, on the full and see how we get there, and let's see what we can learn from that. So your expectations of assessment are very different. But let's try it and see what happens. And then, so the marks you give essentially for the work being done isn't necessarily for writing the code, but for it's that evaluation and understanding and these kind of competencies that we also need for the workplace. So that's, at the ground level. So we know that almost every student is using AI. Okay, we know that the main fear is that they will get caught cheating. So that's the only deterrent to not using it. But there, as I said earlier, there's this professional life that they have as a student here, and they have this personal life that they have, and that personal life is fully imbued with AI, and the professional life is not. And if this duality, when they come inside the gates of the university and the academy, and they're trying to resolve those two things, and it's like very much a classic small child going to primary school, home knowledge versus school knowledge, and how do I do this? So we're seeing that emerging again, and it's really interesting. But I suppose we have had lots of projects. Lots of my colleagues have been involved in projects where they utilize AI as part of projects, and have learned a lot about how students engage and use AI. So that's coming back to us through the Teaching and Learning, Associate Deans for Teaching and Learning, and through the Centre for Teaching and Learning, and our VP for Teaching and Students. So we're still trying to synthesize all those information. My interests, I use AI every single day, as professionally. I mean, I code every single morning using AI. And I reflect and see what will work, how my coding practice has changed, the kinds of what works, what doesn't work. I use all of the tools. I'm pretty much agnostic when it comes to all these tools. I'm not really concerned, like say Rosemary would be, about what are the approaches to generating, what algorithms are we using. I mean, I understand the algorithms, but I don't care about them. I only care about the end tools and how they can be used in an educational context. I've cloned myself, my voice, my video. with AI. I have
So we could have had that version here tonight of John.
I built a model of one of my courses where I give it and the students can ask questions from all of those, a video model where they can talk to it, just literally talk, and it will be me talking back. My wife is tells it's very scary, where I don't show any recognition for the people that are there, if she were to talk to it. But it's where education is going. So I'm also looking at how staff can use this to help us be better teachers, and it happened with computer science students, they'll look at your videos you put on at 2 a.m. They'll watch that video at 2 a.m. Then they'll send you an email at 3 a.m. saying, I didn't understand this bit. And then they'll send you another email at 8:30 in saying, you didn't come back to me. You didn't come back to me. So now I have this stuff that's there and they can talk to that and they don't have to talk to me really. And they like this, and they like it. It changes the way we teach because learning hasn't really changed much. Learning, as Vygotsky told us, you have a mentor who's knowledgeable or you have knowledgeable peers. And what's happening now in that community of learners is that AI is moving in as one of those peers, and it's helping them learn and assist. And we can manage that. And I worked with Charlie and her colleagues last week about how do you do this and how do you learn with this. And there's a great grow for wanting us as a university to tell them how to do that stuff so that they can go into industry. So lots happening, lots
and
and
I
lots
know
and
you
lots
built an app as well. And
well, I build apps all the time. But one was used for the university. So, for example, we had a requirement that we have to identify all the data and digital modules. So all the modules in the university that have data skills or digital skills. It's a requirement from the Higher Education Authority. We have over 3,000 modules. So we have to analyze all of these. So I wrote, with AI, developed an app that would data mine all of the modules, build an app, categorize them initially as data or digital based around the policies that we would have had, build the online database, build the app, build the user interface, build all the software tools that tested all that, did all the training, and then all of that stuff, all with AI. And it's now allows us to be able to do a huge task in a couple of days. And do all the report generation as well, so the VP has an easier job. But so yeah, I mean,
I can't imagine how long that would have taken.
Yeah, I mean, we were talking about agentic AI. We were talking about agentic AI. I gave a talk 2 weeks ago to a couple of hundred nurses on how you might nurses educators and how you might utilize AI, agentic AI. So in 3 hours, I built a patient with diabetes and with all the symptoms of diabetes. I built a nurse that would be a diabetes nurse. I hosted it all online using N8N, for example. It's a software agentic tool. I built a front end to this where I could talk to it using my phone and tell me, I could say things like, my sugar has spiked, what am I going to do? And it would actually send me back an audio message telling me exactly what would happen and build up those profiles. It took me 3 hours to build all this. So this is what we need to be teaching students to be able to do if they want to be able to avail and work in the workplace. And it's going to take time.
Yeah, it's going to take time.
It's going to take time to do that.
Yeah.
Because we have marks and standards. We have, the expectations of the academy. We have integrity. We have academic integrity. We have all of these things. So getting a module from where it is now to where it might need to be is slow. Okay, it really is slow. I mean, that's not criticism of anybody, but it takes time. We have to have external approval, all that stuff. So yes, we do need to get where you want it to be, but we actually, it's going to take us time to do it, and we do it one module at a time. It's, unfortunately.
Yeah.
I suppose just a few comments. One thing that we have to do in terms of the students and their assessments is change how we assess, so that the assessments now can allow the use of AI, and that we then think about these things at that higher level. Students are using AI, yes, but you can easily see those who are using AI to just use AI, and those who are using AI and know how to use it and know their subject, so they can use AI in the way that is going to benefit them to get better grades and so on. So it's about how we get people to engage. And I suppose one of the interests I have in terms of the programming side of things is that I work with software verification, where you have to be very clear about the specifications that you write in order to write the code. And when we use AI, what we're doing is we're prompting to get code back, and writing those specifications and expressing them in a very clear way is exactly what we do when we verify code. And now that's exactly what we want to do when we prompt AI. So it's about teaching those skills and teaching them in the right way and assessing them in the right way.
Mari? That sounds like something you and I were talking about earlier.
Yes. When I am thinking about prompting, because we're prompting and super prompting all the time, I think back to my stepwise refinement days. And literally, I think it was Adam Winstanley taught me the course back in, I think, first or second year. And literally, that's always in my mind. And if you follow stepwise refinement, you actually do quite good prompts. So yeah.
Here, here.
I think you said that's how we should remarket the,
Yes,
the
yeah,
courses
and I do.
for grads.
Yeah, I do think when I'm looking up the computer science head up there, I think rebranding computer science into prompt engineering. But I think back to your point, understanding fundamentally coding is really important, and then being able to use Gen AI as an enabler is the point here. Because again, in the industry, there's no point kind of coming in trying to trick people. Like, nobody wants that. That's not useful to anybody. But being able to kind of use it, and what you'll hear in industry all of the time is AI will not take your job, but the person who knows how to use AI will.
Interesting. Charlie, over to you. I really want to get your perspective in terms of how you've used AI, but also just you've been at the university here over the last couple of years as this sea change has been kind of, wafting over us all. Can you tell us about your experience? What have you seen among the student cohort and yourself? Oh.
Yeah, so I started back in 2022. I began my journey in Maynooth then, and that was kind of when we kind of were introduced, I guess, to like the likes of like ChatGPT and stuff as well, and we were all terrified, so none of us used it. Well, I didn't use it. And then when I progressed then into my final year, I was like very overwhelmed, and I didn't really know what to do in a lot of places because I have dyslexia. So I found it as such a tool for accessibility, and it really helped me get to the advantage that I felt a lot of my classmates had over me because of my learning disability. So I felt like I'm finally at the same level as them due to being able to use like the likes of like Quillbot or like Notebook LM as like aspects of like I used. So they'd help me like kind of revise papers and stuff like that. So I'd be kind of like up to date on like my readings and stuff in classes, and then I'd have my reports structured properly, and I'd have my essays properly grammared and everything as well, because it's something that like with dyslexia it doesn't really click. It's not great up there, but it's like it really helped me in terms of like doing my thesis and everything as well. Like that's a 10,000 word essay basically, and it really helped me compartmentalize kind of what I needed to do, and like the research took me a lot less time because I wasn't struggling with the reading aspect of it, and I could actually do productivity as well, like on side of this and everything as well, whilst running for elections back in March for my position. So like all of this and having these kind of aspects and elements to my degree like really did help and assist me. But there was quite a lot of backlash in terms of like I did politics and philosophy. So with philosophy, we had to declare if we used AI and how we utilized it and how we used it, and also why we would use it. We didn't have to show examples or anything like that, but once we did that, it was fine and everything like that, and it would all just go into account. But with politics, if we used it, we would have been sent straight to just disciplinary. So it was really like kind of combative in my opinion, because I felt like I was finally at an advantage that all of the other students that in my class, that like I finally was at the same playing level as them. So I found it like so great, and I found it great for accessibility, and like also it helped me learn kind of how to critically think and like assess things, and kind of actually made my life a lot easier and made my job now a lot easier. So
that's fascinating. That's really, really interesting. And I think it brings me to the next question, which is around sort of the positives and negatives and thinking about balancing this. I think AI seems to be, at least in the public discourse, one of those things that's like Marmite to people. It's either the end of the world or it's going to solve anything. And most people, I suppose, none of those feelings lack an evidentiary base either. There's something to back some of those things up, or at least to have the fear. So I want to probe both of those just a little bit. As we know, like Geoffrey Hinton, the godfather of AI himself, has been on warning about things. Sam Altman as well. And yet, everything from racial and gender bias to accuracy, misinformation, of course, the challenges around energy use and the effects on the climate and safety. But there's also so many positives that we've kind of been touching on, everything from increasing equity and inclusion to the promise of solving the big wicked problems out there. So I really want to explore some of those things. So let's start with those ethical concerns. We'll start with the ethical concerns first. So this is really for any of you on the panel, but students and staff, we know, and everyone out there, I think, has a lot of concerns about the array of ethical considerations. So How should we, as a university, be approaching this from an educational perspective? Does anybody want to take that one?
I think we have started those discussions, you know, and we had some discussions with the students. We've been looking at colleagues, and again, we look at one of the discussions I've been having is around power and responsibility, and it's about the power that's there, like any power, and how you are, what your responsibility is in terms of using that power. But it's very, very difficult, you know, when you are a student and you sign up with TikTok and you mention AI once, and for days and days and days, you're going to get, you know, here's how you cheat with TikTok, essentially, right? This is it, with AI. And you're in that group and you're in that space. I'm in all of those groups myself, because how do I know what's happening unless that's how I know, yeah. So you've got to be there, right, in order to know what's happening. And, you know, ethics never comes into the question. So I put questions in on the, you know, to the people who are giving these videos, you know, and say, well, what do you think, you know, ethically is good about this? No answers. You know, I've been guaranteed never to get a like for asking that question or any of those things. So they're shying away from that. And I think that's why the module that Susie is going to work on with the ethics and digital and AI, so will be really, really useful. And I think the plan is to make this as a micro-credential so that it could be with staff and so forth as well. So it's not just, or anybody, in fact, you know, that we can look at this. But I find a lot of people do it with abandon and don't care, you know, really about it. You know,
as being self-aware enough to kind of check
now
ourselves.
you can ask, there are gates in place where you can ask it to do something unethical, and it will still tell you, sorry, I can't get this. But I can use software to generate fake news images, and showed students how to do this last week for protests in Dublin against something or other. Fantastic. And it will do all that. So, you know, and so the only way we really think about ethics is to bring that back to the human, and not allow the machine to be looking at the ethics.
And that literacy piece.
And that's the literacy.
Somebody want to come in? Mark?
I do want to kind of broaden at least the definition of education through the lens of what John has said and what Maria said as well, right? We've got to view this not so much and I know we're in an academic institution here right now tonight talking specifically, but I view it more as a kind of societal education, right? This is very much a moment where it's kind of all generations, all vocations across the entire society. And in essence, education and training coupled, multi-generational from effectively teenagers and above now, have to be aware in two realms, right? Realm one is the ability to distinguish what has been generated by AI and separate out the concept of fake versus real. And this starts to get back into the philosophy of epistemology, I think if I'm pronouncing it correctly. And then secondly, of course, then as we think about this kind of Irish people have always had this digital fluency, right? Since the 90s, we've adopted a whole bunch of technologies such that across all age groups, right, we've been very, very quick to adopt. And I'm sure AI is going to be no different here as well. And then to Mary's point then, right, and John's point about the nursing, right, we've got to then be able to educate society as a whole to benefit from, because it is quite democratized all of a sudden when you go to vibe coding, right, and vibe interfacing with AI. Mm-hmm. So the more we think about education in the broader sense from an Irish society perspective, I think we'll have less fear about how AI can be used for bad, I think, over time.
I think I would take the personal piece as well, similar to John. I think from an industry perspective, you're going to come into the workplace. The expectation is that you will and can use AI. And I think it's being transparent and open about that. And then back to my 5 C's from earlier, because it is just an enabler. So I think that's incredibly important. So being able to use it is just essential for all the jobs. But also, there's no point hoodwinking. Back to Rosemary's point, we know when AI has been used, especially for kind of, trying to hoodwink people into using it. So it's about being open and transparent.
I might follow up. Oh, did you have something, Aid?
Yeah, ethics is always tough, right? I think, I think it behooves us all to use AI responsibly as individuals. I think as well the big players in the market as well also need to behave responsibly as well, in terms of protecting users from bad content, in terms of minimizing the environmental impact. So there's big challenges there. But I think I would take the perspective. this is a huge moment, right? This is like a industrial revolution-sized kind of moment. And so, I think we have to realize that moment. A friend actually, I was chatting to him about tonight, and he said, one thing we could do a lot better of maybe in the universities is actually teach, a history of technology, and how it affects society, because like when you look at the Industrial Revolution, yes, it did change so much and so many jobs changed and how we live changed. But we're all still here. Right, so I think it's really important that even I studied art, and when the invention of the camera, everybody thought art was dead. Okay, and that was, I guess, in the 1910s or around the turn of the century, and wow, like that, it just art completely reinvented itself. The music industry is doing really, really well despite streaming, So in a sense, I guess maybe I am cautiously optimistic, right, of what we might achieve. And I think, just, the point on equity, I mean, right now we have a shortage of GPs. We have people in waiting lists, right? If we think about what we can do to take that nexus of information maybe that's in a doctor or a professional, and actually kind of magnify it and scale it, right? These are huge opportunities for us. So, like I say, I think it's a very powerful tool that we have now uncovered. It's up to us to use it wisely.
Any other positive use cases now? You've given us a good one, but what are the things that really excite you about the kind of promising potential of AI? Anybody have one they want to share?
I was thinking about that, and this year I want AI to do my Christmas shopping. Right?
Ooh, very good.
I kid you not, right? There's a guy who said this 5 years ago, and we all laughed, and that'll never happen. And actually, I think this year it is possible. All right, so
good.
just saying.
Well, ask your family members how it did in the new year.
No, don't.
Anybody else want to add?
I think from education, I think it's going to help us be better educators. I mean, if you have a pedagogy, and it allows us to be able to build tools to help students learn. It allowed us to be able to engage in simulations that we mightn't have had previously. It allows the students to create simulations. They can collaborate with teams. We have teams, my PhD students up there, Mark, we did work where we had teams of students, and we were able to include AI students as well, to flesh out teams and help, be a team member where skills might be missing so that the team can still progress, in CS, and it worked out quite well for us. But we have lots of opportunities where we can look at learning environments, not necessarily online learning environments, but any learning environment, and we can utilize AI in so many different ways to help us help the students become better learners, and help us become better teachers. I mean, I know I'm a bit of an AI zealot, but we can actually learn a lot about how we do what we do, and teach us, and I have a really positive outlook on that. But I think, as Rosemary mentioned, the second level students earlier, we need to be pushing our new teacher educators. Maynooth is fantastic. We have all levels of educators for teaching here. We need to be able to teach these people to be able to teach children how to engage with AI in a responsible way as well. You know more about this than me, right?
Well, I suppose I just wanted to say that on Tuesday, some of us from the computer science department were at the consultation for the new Leaving Cert curriculum, and it's really encouraging to see the coverage of AI there and machine learning, as well as the foundational skills that we've mentioned here that we need in computer science, so that it is being done. Even at the primary school level, we've computational thinking in there in the maths program. So there's the core skills are being taught, the skills are being taught now at Leaving Cert, and we need to be able to react to those then at third level as well.
Before we go to the audience, I just want to give you all a chance to ask one another a question that you might have. So we can turn the tables a little bit. I'll sit back. Does anybody want to give it a go? Anybody want to start? A burning question for one of the other panelists. Oh, here we go.
So John and Rosie, okay. So back in the day, so when I was lecturing, I do remember people used to submit programs that weren't theirs, right? And I remember one group in particular because they both submitted 4 copies of the exact same computer program printed on the same paper, and all they had done was change the name on the top. So
Not even the variable names.
not even variable names, right? So I guess in a sense, I am curious to know, how do you plan to kind of prevent plagiarism or prevent that kind of copying? I mean, it was always there in the past,
Okay, so I never ever have accused a student of plagiarism. I always accuse them of unauthorized collaboration. And so I mark the assignment first and foremost, and then I divide the mark by the number of students who submitted a similar assignment. And so that's what everybody gets.
Nice
And then
way
I
of doing
look at the code.
Yeah.
And this code generation, that we have now currently, with AI, I mean, it's no different because they used to go to GitHub, they go to Stack Overflow, anywhere, and just pick up the assignments. In fact, the answers to all of my assignments, you could buy them online. I was quite surprised from a Russian website, but I could have, set up that site. But you're right. So now we have this situation. We have always done this, but a lot of time now. So we moved to an in-class model where we ask them to talk about the code that they have in front of them during the lab. And so everybody gets a couple of minutes, and this has happened in lab. It means our lab demonstrators in computer science, for example, have to work a little bit harder, but they have that interaction. What can you explain what that line means? Why is it there? And so forth. And then, and pretty quickly whether it's happening or not. But you still can get huge quantities of code that are produced. And the problem is that we're moving to a situation where our problems we're giving students are so big, they're essentially using APIs. And they don't actually know what's happening inside the API either, and they're trusting that. So we want them to build bigger and fancier things, when really we probably should be having them looking at smaller, nuanced things, I think, in a way, and that might help. But
I suppose just to say, John, you're very generous. I give them all 0 and let them come in and explain what went on. I suppose, just to say with project work as well, because final year projects, MSc projects and so on, there would certainly be a interview component where you really get to find out whether the person wrote the code themselves, if they understood it, and with AI or without AI. So, yeah.
Just one last part. We also use peer assessment and peer grading, and there are well understood formal ways in which peer groups can assess each other, and we look at self-assessment or self-evaluation over peer evaluation, and then we train the students on how to evaluate and as well others, and how to give peer feedback and how to do self-analysis and self-evaluation. And once we've taught the students how to do this, actually in this group work, so we find that we get nice marking schemes, and people contribute, and so we can manage a little bit better by moving into group-based working as well. And again, we've built tools to facilitate that. It's good,
I might keep you guys in the hot seat if that's okay. How are you looking to make Maynooth graduates the most marketable now in the market, going into industry in this era?
Well, we kind of have we kind of have this approach of enculturation here, really. So we're not teaching students about, we're teaching them to be. So, we're not teaching them about software engineering anymore, we're teaching them to be software engineers. And that's why we have all those placements, why we have, and if a module or a program doesn't have a placement, it has other skills in order to be able to ensure that they are meeting those expectations. So we have a whole unit on student skills and success, and they've developed programs which we can actually integrate into our modules, and then the students can go and take those courses and so forth as well. So we are doing a lot across the university, not just in the department, I think.
And I suppose another thing would be a lot of our computer science students would also study other subjects through arts programs or science programs, so they've got a broad basis in which they're working, so there's a lot of interdisciplinary work going on, and that's reflected in the projects as well.
Ask us hard questions.
Okay, I might ask.
I was going to ask about formal verification of AI-generated code, but that is just so narrow band, we'll take it at dinner.
Fair enough. suppose a question maybe for Mark in terms of what the biggest challenge is in AI and your workplace, and what you see, how do you see things changing in the next year? I won't even say 2 years, in the next year.
As I keep telling my manager and his manager, the scale is getting scalier. It is utterly absurd, right? You're tasked with being custodian of many multiples of like the Irish national annual budget, right? To deliver in place, in time, with the right amount of power and GPUs functional, right? And it's serious kind of like money, right? And you open up the FT or the Wall Street Journal in the morning, and you're reading about the projects that you're actually doing and delivering, right? So like I've been working on Stargate for 2 years, for example. So you hear about that, Abilene, Texas. I've been involved since like day zero on that stuff. So it's kind of nuts to be reading about these stuff. And these actors then, some of the ones that like you read in the news, they're like, well, they're kind of like pointing fingers at you saying, where's my stuff? Where's my stuff? So that I find that stuff to be, you know, incredibly high pressure, like high demanding stuff, right? And, you know, modulo, and again, it comes back to some of the environmental stuff, modulo the amount of power being available, you know, it's going to continue going and going and going. So that you know, it's both exciting every day to read it, but to be in the midst of it, it's also a little bit kind of just when I come back, you know, back to Maynooth, and it feels like, oh wow, you know, it is, you know, when you reflect on it, it's tough. You know.
I think probably the biggest challenge is that because, I mean, it is moving so fast, we need to really understand, I guess, where our users are, what problems that they are solving, and in a sense how they feel about it, the products that we're building. And, you know, like that is a real challenge, because we're kind of, in a sense, then playing in many spaces, because we're trying to figure out, hey, how is this going to work out? Will this really connect with users? You know, I know there's lots of wonderful ideas and super narratives about how we might use AI. Okay, I am reminded of, I think, Christmas 2012, when I had an Alexa. And I thought, oh my God, we have completely broken the internet. You know, the human-computer interface is changed forever. All you got to do is talk to the thing. You know, it was like amazing, you know. And then a year later, I'm using it to set egg timers, okay, and set egg timers, right? Like literally, it turns out that the kind of things I thought, like, it just wasn't what users were really doing, right? So, so this is really interesting stuff. What are the problems we can solve for people, and how will they adopt it? How will they use it? And that means really moving fast, experimenting, seeing how things work, what doesn't work, and really just adapting. So yeah, big challenges.
I mean, setting a timer for 30 seconds to go brush your teeth is pretty important.
I know.
When you're a parent. Go ahead, John.
I have one last one. Sorry. Yeah. So we talked about a bit about, you know, what we can do for industry, and essentially we are always generating the next group of students who are making their way into the workforce. But what about the huge number of people in the workforce, you know, who need CPD and AI? And are you doing all that work yourselves, or should we be thinking about providing solutions to CPD in Gen AI, for example, as a university?
We are doing a lot of training, and actually the biggest blocker to AI at the moment is adoption, like all tech projects. And I suppose the big thing actually about AI that is very different to all the technology that's come before is it's not actually a technology, it's a capability, or certainly that's how we see it. But I actually think that could be very helpful, because when I'm looking at how we're prompting and super prompting, the ability to create incredible training courses now is huge. But then back to having educators and academics helping us do that in the right way could be incredibly helpful. I think back to Charlie's point about the customization and making it accessible to different people and different ways of learning could be really helpful, yeah.
That's good. Well, I want to open it up to the floor now for questions. It's hard for me to see, so...
Oh, thank you so much. It was very interesting discussion. I remember when I was coming, I didn't know much about AI. I used to see AI as an enemy, like that. So, and I used to avoid to use it like in my assignments and etc. I'm a student here. I'm a first-year PhD, and it has been like a very big discussion about why should we use or not, because I feel like using AI makes everything very easy. And sometimes I used to ask myself, like, are we going to be a very strong professionals in the future? So that's when Mark mentioned about we should see it as a way of improving our productivity. So my question is, how? Because the students, they tend to use AI to make their work easier. Apart from reading like 10 papers, so they put all the papers in the AI and they make a summary. Is it good? Will they learn things? Like, I just want to know about you guys, what you guys think, how the student can do.
That's a great question.
Thanks.
Oh yeah, great. So my dark secret right now is that I am actually a student too, and I have an exam next week. Okay, and so I've realized a lot about the way that I learn, and it takes me 3¼ hours after probably a year's worth of training now to do this particular exam. It's a strategic and financial analysis of a company. And what I think is kind of funny is I can then give the exact same exam now to Gemini and it will do it in 5 seconds, right? So, and actually it does a pretty good job. Not as good, it lacks a little sparkle sometimes, but so what do I think? I've been using AI as a sparring partner to help me get better. Okay. At the end of the day, I've done 4 or 5 mock exams on my own so that I know I can do it, right? So now that I have confidence in the skill, and I feel great about that, I'd have no problem now at work having an AI do it in 15 seconds, and then I'm going to review it, and then I'm going to add the sparkle, right? Because I understand it, I really get it, So this is, I think, kind of what we mean. I do think that we have to, as humans, put in the hard work. We have to understand it. We have to feel it, and then, like I say, when you've got that, now you can really run. You can accelerate. So hope that helps.
That's great. Is there another question?
Sorry, I could just say I was also studying for the last year and had an exam with Comreg on amateur radio. And again, I used AI to help me as my study partner. It created all the exam questions for me. It tested me on my understanding of the topics. I wrote prompts that would Socratic-based prompts, so I could learn as a partner. And we've been teaching students to do that here as well. Anybody who wants to know, they can just come along and find out. But like it's that utilizing it as that study partner, but you retain all the control, and it's useful to do that. Yep.
Having trouble seeing. Are there other questions? There's a hand here in the middle. Or is there one up there? Go. Oh, somebody already got a mic up there. Yep, go ahead.
Is this mic working? Thanks for taking time to be here this evening. Has AI reignited any old passions or helped you realign with your childlike interests?
Great question. Anybody thoughts there? Fun hobbies?
Well, I learned Elvish, with AI's help. A little bit of Dwarvish as well, I used to read Lord of the Rings every single year. So yeah, it's been great for that.
Anybody else? Any fun? Not yet? You might have prompted an idea, though.
When you said old passions, I was like, old girlfriends. I think, a hard question, a really, really good one. Here's the thing, what I do find is, I find myself asking very detailed questions to AI. Okay, and particularly I do this a lot. Previously when I would, let's say, search for something, I would only have 3 words I might search for. Now I'm giving a whole paragraph of my wants and needs, right? So I found it very, very helpful in bicycle maintenance and a whole bunch of other kind of areas. So I guess, if the underlying question is it kind of reigniting a sense of fun and curiosity? 100%, absolutely, yeah.
That's great. Wave. Yeah, go ahead.
Thanks a million for a really insightful discussion. I am a massive fan of AI. I'm a very big fan of work smart, not hard. But in my line of work, I'm finding, like you mentioned about the graduates and how encouraged they are about learning new things and wanting to hit the ground running. There is that level in the industry of people who are not graduates who have been, let's say, data entry for all their lives. And we're trying to encourage AI in that particular environment. How should we encourage them to use AI, or how do you feel about that specifically in just like that kind of industry, if that makes sense?
Yeah, sure. I think from a data entry or those kind of roles, I think it really is around, Mark touched on earlier about the right risk framework and the right structures. So again, sometimes, they know their job, like it's probably very task oriented, but now they might be able to review some of that work. And again, it's about being able to maybe get through more, not necessarily, I suppose, doing things fundamentally different, but more of an oversight or monitoring role than maybe the doing role. But it is back to structure, frameworks, guidance, and then helping them, because the biggest part is adoption. And then I think sometimes people in those roles are afraid they will lose their jobs, but it's thinking, how can you do more? And I think that's actually where the conversation industry is starting to move now. It's always been about cost efficiency, but what we're starting to talk to clients about now is the ability to generate new revenue or new net revenue streams, and where you can help them contribute towards that allows them, I suppose, feel more secure in their roles, and again, help the organisation become bigger, which is obviously good for all employees.
Yeah, I'll take a quick pass on this. This ties back, I think, to my earlier point about broadening the definition of education. I really feel that access to at least Gen AI, with some concept of like how to write your life story into it now, actually is one of the most democratizing things possible, right, for all skills, all vocations, and all walks of life. So if one can imagine, right, if their job is effectively data classification or data entry or some sort of like manual toil elements to it, right, with the right kind of like bootstraps and supports from more kind of like of our vocational training programs as well, and not necessarily our academic ones, these people will suddenly have these kind of eureka moments, right, which may actually have allow them to add value to their roles in a kind of self-directed way, right? So rather than waiting for potentially someone to tell them, or you go take some prescriptive course, right? We've got to be now empowering all of society around these kind of like access to how to use the technology.
That's great. I see. Sorry, I need sunglasses, I think. Go ahead, I think we...
It was kind of alluded to earlier in the conversation, but how do we hold account AI powers, for want of a better word, for the use of their tools and their technologies? And related to that, how do we balance policy and legislation versus innovation? So, for example, I think the US is putting a lot of pressure on the European Union for their technologies to have unfettered access to the markets here, right, without any regulation, and saying, if you don't, we'll increase tariffs or whatever, right, threats like that. So, and I think sometimes the European Union can legalize, let's just say, and stifle innovation. So how do we throw that all into the pot and balance it, of keeping companies accountable versus innovation?
I'm looking over there at our Maynooth grad and Fianna Fáil spokesperson on AI, local TD, Nisha Carroll, if you want to come in there. But really for our panel, no, I'll let you. I won't put you on the spot.
While he's coming on board, you getting ready?
Anybody here?
I'll just throw in something there. I mean, I actually think that the EU gets a lot of things right. Okay, and I think that certainly it's really good to see large companies actually engage early with the regulators, so that actually, in a sense, regulation maybe becomes a design constraint. And then we can talk about whether the constraint is changed at some time or not. But ultimately, I think the early engagement, I think, is really important.
Really good question. And if we, so Nisha Carroll, TD for Kildare North, and Fianna Fáil spokesperson in artificial intelligence. So the EU AI Act came into place, and as part of that, there's a requirement in each member state to have a regulator or set regulators. I introduced a bill actually during the summer to establish a national AI office to act as the competent regulator in Ireland. That's now been proceeded with. And there was funding announced in the recent budget for that particular office. Now, I'm fearful it doesn't go as far as it should, to be honest. It only got 1.9 million. I was looking for 25 million and 80 full-time employees. But it is a start. The fear I have is, obviously, the word regulation and regulator is sometimes seen as a dirty word, particularly at the moment. And it's seen as stopping progress. But we have to be cognizant as well of the pace of change of AI, but also the risks that come with it, as well as the opportunities. And some of those risks we saw recently with the presidential election, a deepfake video of now President Catherine Connolly, claiming that she was stepping back from the race. We've seen very recently as well pornographic videos being created using people's social media profile photos and photos that are on their social media profiles. And that's the type of stuff that we really need to get ahead of. A regulator as well should also act as an enabler, and I've mentioned this to a lot of people as well. And we take small to medium enterprises in Ireland as an example. You have your screwfix.ie, or Lenihan's actually is a very good example. Lenihan's hardware in Dublin versus Barrett's here in Maynooth. Lenihan's, for example, have used GPTs and have created their own AI agents, whereas Barrett's and Maynooth are not, we'll say, equipped to the same standards. So Lenihan's are becoming far more efficient, they're increasing their sales, they're improving their SEO, and then the flip side, other small and medium enterprises are falling behind. And that's one example, but in comparative, it could be your Amazon. So now we're at a stage where smaller players are competing with the larger players and they're eating up their lunch. Let's be straight about it. Yeah. But just to wrap up very quickly, there is a need for us to regulate, but we shouldn't over-regulate to the point where we stall progress.
Thanks for that. And I think it's probably time to wrap up. But what I just had one thought, actually. It goes back to something Aid said earlier. I feel like we're actually about this being this like sort of seismic moment that we're in. I feel like we could be looking back on tonight and we'll play back our comments and see how well they fare. But it does feel like quite a seminal moment in time. So I'm really, really grateful to all of you for coming in tonight and sharing your thoughts, your guidance, your advice with our staff, our students, our alumni, and with the public, because it's only by having these conversations that we actually try to navigate the positives and negatives and everything in between. So can we please give our panelists a warm round of applause?